This is the best of First and Last, the podcast.
We did it. Super Bowl 52 is now set, and in each of the games on one side, I don't know if anyone could have predicted how one team got there, and on the other side, I think we all saw this coming in the about the most obvious fashion possible. The New England Patriots find their way back to yet another Super Bowl with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick at the helm. It's gotten to the point now where Allie and I were sitting here talking before the show this morning, and you know the set of storylines that come with the Patriots when you have them as one of the entrants into the Super Bowl. And I don't know if they're even points that you can bring up in an arguable fashion anymore. Like you have the Brady-Belichick greatest of all time arguments, where this organization lands in those. And the answer to all of them is at the top. Like, they're the best at this point, right? We can't really dispute what the Patriots have accomplished in this time period. It feels unprecedented. By most statistical accounts, it is unprecedented. The things that we're seeing not only this quarterback do, but this team do, are unmatched in the history of this league. And so all you can do at some point is sit back and marvel at it, and sit back and appreciate it for what it is, and continue to wonder aloud when it's going to end. Because we can look at a bunch of different things that are going to come up for the Patriots this offseason as reasons for why it may not work, but they are reasons that we've seen before, and the bottom line seems to be that as long as Brady and Belichick and Bob Kraft are back in the saddle, you feel like you got a chance. Now, how did we get here? Well, we know it started last week, really on Wednesday, with the Tom Brady handgate, and after an opening drive where Tom Brady went 6 for 6, we all kind of realized how stupid it was to even for a second entertain the thought that this may have affected Tom. Tom himself, after the game, describing what it was like to have a week that was a bit out of character and a bit out of the ordinary for him.
Yeah, it was pretty, never had anything like it. Well, I've had a couple crazy injuries, but this was pretty crazy. And they come up and you deal with them, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do, on Wednesday night, and then Thursday, wasn't sure, and then Friday gained a little confidence, and then Saturday was trying to figure out what we could do, and Sunday try to come out here and make it happen. So I just want the guys to, we all put a lot out there, and this was a little injury at the end of the day. It's certainly a big part of what a quarterback does. I've had a lot worse injuries than this, but if this was on my left hand, I could care less, but it's based on where it was, and we had to deal with it.
First and last of Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Hands across America!
Feel like we're going to be running out of chances soon to play that, considering that now the Patriots will have 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl where this will continue to heal and it will become even more of a non-story unless the Patriots feel like drumming it up again and maybe trying to convince us, having Teddy Bruschi convince us that poor Rex Burkhead probably did this in practice. That was the right way to go about trying to blame, too, by the way, because who could get mad at Rex Burkhead? Like, he's this scrappy underdog white running back who's not supposed to be there, getting by on effort and ability to catch passes out of the backfield. Like, of course he was attacking the handoff like it was the last handoff of his life. He's not supposed to be here. But you look at that, and so the other portions of this game that you can look at and certainly say were major factors for the Patriots were the fact that yet again, much like last year's playoff run for this team, they did it without who most people would consider, in a weird dynamic, maybe not the most important player on the team, since Tom Brady seems to have that ironed out, but at the very least probably the guy that is most undoubtedly the best at his position all time, in Rob Gronkowski, who exited at the end, or it's in the middle of the second quarter, with a concussion, and in a moment that was a make or break moment for the NFL, they made it because they sent him immediately to the locker room for evaluation. We had seen the instances with Russell Wilson and a number of other cases where the concussion protocol wasn't followed to the letter of the law, and the backlash was rightly loud. And so in this moment, I saw that happen, and I said, they have got to send this guy to the locker room. Whatever happens after that, we were going to debate anyway, and this ultimately played out the best way it could PR-wise for the league. But they needed to get him in that locker room so they could say, we are going to start holding them accountable in a point where, listen, if you were looking for any place to fudge the process, it would be in the second quarter of the AFC Championship with the guy that we hammered home all week as the most important matchup on the field. That being said, they didn't have him for the whole second half, and that was when they really came to play, and Dion Lewis, the Patriots running back, explained why that was possible.
It's great, man. Everybody believes in each other, man. It's a family. We work extremely hard together. All the blood, sweat, and tears we put together since, July. Before that, actually, since April. So, just to come together as a team, John's a big part of our offense. Everybody knows that. But, other guys stepped up, and Mendoza's an animal. Animal. I'm cussing. I don't care. He's an animal. He's a beast. Man, just we see where he played, man. Just teammates, everybody plays so hard. Man, I'm just happy to be a part of it.
First and last of Mike Golic Jr. Do you think the Patriots are kind of emboldened after hearing how normalized swearing became with Jalen Ramsey over the last week? Like, Jalen Ramsey was just dropping F-bombs and B-words every chance that he got. So Dion Lewis is like, you know what? Yeah, we can be bad too. I know how to have fun. I know how to have a good time. I'm swearing. I don't care. What are you guys going to do about it? It is worth noting, though, that Danny Amendola, a part yet again of history, and this is where it starts to get really redundant and obvious with the Patriots in a way that we just can't really find new superlatives for at this point. Like, I look at the way that this played out, and going into halftime, the Patriots are down. The Jacksonville Jaguars had been doing what they had done leading up until this point, imposing their will up front, ton of physicality, relying on that run game, getting enough timely production from Blake Bortles, and over the course of that game, it was a lot very eerily similar to the AFC Championship game, where you looked at Blake Bortles and said, I need you to maybe carry one drive on your own, and then besides that, make 2 or 3 throws that are going to put me on my butt. And for the most part, he did that. Had a couple of downfield strikes that really made you wow. Threw it into a couple of tight windows. And then got loose off play action. Hit a couple of short passes to running backs in the flat. Patriots blew a coverage or two early on that really allowed them to set up scoring position. And then going into halftime, they make the adjustments necessary. And then from there on out, their training kicks in. Keyshawn Johnson, ESPN LA 710, talked about the New England Patriots just knowing flat out how to handle this situation.
6-1 with Belichick and Brady all time. I mean, I've never seen this type of run in sports, individual sports, yes, not in team sports, but it's that pressure that they apply. They never feel like they're out of the game, no matter what the situation is, and they go down the field methodically, and they take their chances when they need to. 2 big plays on PIs got them in great position to score touchdowns. So when you're doing that, no matter what the case is, those are positive yards. A lot of people don't look at those plays and say they're positive. They look up as negatives, but those are positive yards, and they just know how to do it. I mean, they just know how to do it.
First and last here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. And why do they know how to do it? Why do they feel comfortable? Because they've been there over and over again, and the guy calling the shots, the signal caller that they need down the stretch, has been there. I mean, these are mind-numbing. For Tom Brady, it's his 11th game-winning drive in the postseason in the fourth quarter or overtime. 5 more than any other player during the Super Bowl era. It's the Patriots' 4th career playoff win when trailing by 10 in the fourth quarter. Tom Brady's, No other quarterback has more than 1. 11 postseason games in the history of the NFL in which the winning team was down double digits with at least 10 minutes left to go. 4 of those 10 were the Patriots during the Brady and Belichick era. And here's the kicker. 3 of those, the last 3 of them, include a Brady to Danny Amendola touchdown pass during the rally. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's the same thing that happens every time. I sat there in the fourth quarter and I heard that Friday the 13th Michael Myers piano music playing in the background. just slowly starting to build as that dread sank into all of us, because whether or not you're a Patriots fan or not, whether you actually actively hate this team or just wanted to see new blood in there, liked what the Jaguars had to offer you, you couldn't help but feel like this was this sneaking feeling of dread slowly tracking you down, walking, not going to run, not going to run anywhere, just going to walk very slowly, very methodically. Start to try and track you down, and then the piano music starts to play. And you just hear it. You understand that at that point, you are dead. You are dead where you stand, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Because Tom Brady, and now apparently Danny Amendola, are coming to get you.
First and Last, the podcast.
Recovering from conference championship weekend this morning. And recovery feels like the word of choice for the teams on the other end of this, because it was a brutal experience yesterday, really on either losing side that you were on, because on one side in the NFC, you had the Minnesota Vikings, who faced the prospect of hosting a home Super Bowl. Would have been the first time in NFL history for that, and now have that gut-wrenching feeling because no one else had even gotten this close. No one else had made it to conference championship weekend with the prospect of hosting the Super Bowl after. And I really thought about this because, again, the Vikings case was kind of personal for me. I had 3 of my former teammates play on that team, guys that I roomed with, and the prospect of now knowing, well, I'm going to see them during Super Bowl week, but how much more painful it is knowing you were right on the cusp, and now you've got to watch the team that just beat you come to your home city and play in your home stadium. I already saw an article, Kyle Rudolph, who was one of my former teammates, saying that's going to be harder than he could have imagined, especially in the immediacy of this. And so it's a difficult prospect. And on the other side, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you had that game won. You were leading the entire game with 10 minutes to go in the fourth, and it somehow slipped away. And now it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Because now the familiar frame gets started. And Allie, you were saying yesterday you were watching this game with a Bengals fan who already began what is going to be the rallying cry for Patriot haters everywhere today.
It's fixed. It's all fixed.
Oh yeah,
it has to be. It's fact. It's fact.
Oh, okay. So that's where he went.
Yeah.
Is that this is an inarguable fact at this point?
Right. I was like, show me this fact.
People really seem to they think that just if you say something with enough authority and assertively enough that it becomes a fact, right? That seems to be where people make their mistake in all of this. Now, what people are going to point to and what Jaguars players pointed to was the glaring disparity in penalties called on the Patriots versus penalties called on Jacksonville. So if we look at the game last night, the way it shook out, final penalties, 6 for 98 yards on Jacksonville, 1 for 10 yards on New England. NFL research really doing the league no favors, too, by the way, putting this stat out there. They tweeted last night, the Patriots were called for 1 penalty against the Jags. It was the fewest penalties called on one team in a playoff game since the 2011 AFC Championship game, when the Patriots were called for 1 penalty in a win over the Ravens. Like, you know what? Maybe just send that one to drafts, man. Like, someone in PR over there has got to think, maybe this one's not helping our case. Unless they want to, if we want a Patriot spin zone this the way we do all the Tom Brady hand headlines, maybe we say that the NFL enjoys a little bit of this conversation out there because at least people are talking. One of those that maybe no version of conversation is a bad conversation in all of this. Now, someone who may agree to a lesser extent with the Bengals fan Allie watched the game with is A.J. Bouye, one of the Jaguars' star defensive backs who, after the game, did not hold back on his views on the way things were officiated.
Like I said earlier, I don't understand. I was because I seen Amendola headbutt the hell out of Gip in front of the ref. Y'all don't call nothing, then he pushed him after, but y'all waiting for Gip to push. Like, it don't make no sense. I'm going to defend my teammates, and y'all see it on film and on TV, the one where Amendola came and headbutt Gip right after the whistle was blown, right in front of them. I'm just asking how y'all going to let them do that. I understand y'all going to let us play, but certain stuff, we know they trying to instigate stuff. But my man, they headbutted my man. Like, come on, man.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr. on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is a game that, especially in the first half, they were letting everything go. Everything. And then it was about the time that the Gronk hit took place where Gronk's catching a ball near the seam, and it's that classic spot with a tight end where they're catching a ball looking back, they're getting ready to turn right around, and we've seen Gronk on the other end of this get hurt with guys going low, and so you get a defensive back that stays up high. It's a bang-bang play. I mean, the defender was there basically right as he was catching, so there's not a lot of time to adjust. I don't think there's a lot that he could have done to get out of the way of that, and the flag had to come out because that's the letter of the law now, but that really started and begot a lot of what was the rest of the flags for the game, and these Jaguars defensive backs that are a physical group were all of a sudden getting called for a lot. One of the most glaring of which was going to look like Brandon Cooks going up the sideline in a play where there was a lot of hand fighting going on. Brandon Cooks was always almost ridden out of bounds, and I believe it was Jalen Ramsey turns to make a play on the ball still, and the ball is nowhere in the frame when you see that's the worst part about it, is you see the replay, and the ball is nowhere within the frame. So we're all looking at this going, that was catchable. That was somehow a possibility. Oh, that was Boye on it, so even better. More reason for him to be frustrated. And so you start to look at that and realize that, all right, if you're them, it's understandable to be frustrated. I was surprised Jalen Ramsey, of all people, was the one that actually seemed very level-headed after this loss.
Nah, ain't no positives and no L's. I'm going to keep it real with y'all, people. People might try to tell y'all, hey, we taking this out of that, we taking that out of that. Nah, man, we had one goal today, and that was to get to the Super Bowl. And, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. We took a L. So we have to go back to the drawing boards for next year and grind and do more than we did this year to get to that point.
Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. I was pleasantly surprised last night, and I can't decide if the origin of this is in Patriots hate or in an acceptance of more personality, but I was fully expecting to hear more backlash against the brazen, brash style of the Jaguars and all of the stuff that they had talked leading up to this. I thought people would be ready to throw that right back in their face after last night. And maybe we just wanted them to win so bad because they weren't the Patriots and we were willing to accept it. But I am sort of proud of us. I'm willing to give everyone credit on that enough, because you saw after the game there were guys crying. It was an emotional time because this team allows themselves to be unapologetically open and emotional about the way they feel, and I think that's a good thing. And I think that's a fun thing to watch going forward for that team.
First and last, the podcast. First and last, the podcast.
Got some tweets coming into the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. 1-800-Flowers.com always has something to surprise her. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen plus a vase absolutely free. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. And yes, I understand. I was searching for the music from Halloween earlier and not from Friday. That is the sneaking feeling of dread. Michael Myers was in the Halloween movies. I got him confused, all right? Excuse me for confusing some horror slashers from a comparable era, although I'm sure now I'll be reminded that somehow they weren't from a comparable era. And also, Blake Burcham 11 tweets in, did you see the first person to congratulate Brady? Clete Blakeman, the head official. Controversy abounds in the AFC Championship, apparently. We'll see. 888-729-3776. Let's go to Fabian in Georgia. Fabian, you're on first and last. What's going on?
Hey, I'm going to echo the guy who tweeted at you, because I don't get it. Is everyone complicit in this? I'm looking at the game and I'm looking at some of these pass interference calls that were not called earlier in the playoffs on those same cornerbacks, and I just can't believe it. Like, no one's going to talk about this. The game was, it just makes me feel uneasy.
You know what? I think the only place I'll disagree with you is that a lot of people are going to talk about this. I would argue we're probably going to talk about this for a large portion of the day. And the only thing I would say is that the way it was called in the rest of the playoffs really didn't matter to me. It's how this officiating crew calls it. When I was in New Orleans, I got my first real taste of this because Sean Payton and that staff put a tremendous amount of time and energy into scouting the officiating crews that go into game, because crews are like teams and coaches. They've got tendencies. They've got things in their background. They've got things that they've been told to harp on, and they've got things that they tend to pay more attention to than others. So it's what does this crew tend to call now? Where I would look and maybe cry foul if I'm a Jacksonville fan is the way it was called half to half seemed to change, especially looking after that Gronk penalty seemed to change. So that is a way that you might come up and attack this if you felt so inclined. First and last, Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We did have another game that took place, by the way, one that was a lot less close, and the one that I think a lot more people expected to see play out like the first game. The Eagles beat the Vikings 38-7, and that underdog cry continues to get louder for this team. Continues to grow, and the way that this went down, if you would have taken bets on Nick Foles is going to go out there and basically be the driving force behind this win before the game, based on what we had seen the last few games of the regular season into the playoffs, I don't think anyone is taking that bet. Doug Peterson, Eagles head coach, may beg to differ.
My hat's off to Nick. Trusting in his ability, trusting in me as the head coach, and putting him in, ideal situations and play, situations to be successful on the field, and then for the guys to believe in him. He's not a rookie. He's a veteran player who's played a lot of games in this league. He started a lot of games. He had a Pro Bowl year just a couple years ago. So this is not a rookie we're talking about, and just so happy for him, and what he's been through and everything now to finally put not only himself but help this football team get to where we want to go and hopefully finish the year right.
First and last here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, and we had heard a lot of the confidence. I mean, the rallying cry, if you were looking to be confident in Nick Foles, was that 27-2 season. We had beaten that trope into the ground. But last night it finally showed up again. Now, the way it showed up was perfect schematically for the way the Eagles had done business. This team had made hay with a backfield that is full of guys that they can plug in there for their specific role and who will have success. And so what do? You build run-pass options off that. And Nick Foles, in that first half, I don't know if he had a play that he had the option to throw. I don't know if he ever handed it off. They were hitting slants on the backside. They were using Nelson Aguilar, very Percy Harvin-esque. Moving that guy around, fly motion, using him as basically the chess piece to get the defense to show their hand and then to be a distraction and a decoy in a lot of instances and go the other way. So hats off to Doug Peterson, who again continues to cement himself as a pretty darn good play caller in the way that we've seen him mold around personnel in the last couple of seasons. Like, we forget Carson Wentz was not the MVP a year ago. He was a rookie that had growing pains and struggled. And so Doug Peterson continuously tried to put him in situations to win schematically. Make the looks easy for him. Go 5 wide a lot early in the season. Get the ball out of his hands quick. And now with Nick Foles, you were able to fall back on a lot of that while still relying on the things that your team does well. You've got one of the more athletic offensive lines in football. This is a great screen team. We saw them screening in obvious spots yesterday where they were getting guys blown off the ball. But we really know that for this game, when you're looking at what the driving force was, what the moment where it all changed was, a lot of people, and rightly so, will point to the pick six that really kicked off the party for them, coming off of a Minnesota touchdown, off a blown coverage by that Eagles defense. Our own Ryan Clark went on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt last night and talked about how he thought that was the game changer.
To me, it was the play of the day. It's the play that changed the momentum of the game. Minnesota comes out and they march the ball down the field. Case Keenum looks comfortable. The play calling is working for Pat Shurmur. And when you get a pick six, when you score on defense, the opportunities to win go up and they get higher. And you saw this stadium erupt. You saw this team get a different momentum. You saw the offense even start to click at a different rate because of this big play, because of the points on the board, but also because of what it does to the Minnesota Vikings morale as they have to try to come back after the interception.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr. on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. That was the shocking part, by the way, and I tried to tell people this. I got nervous for him the minute I heard this. And I love ESPN 1500 Minnesota. I go on and do a hit with those guys every week. But that one buzzword got brought up last week that made me really uncomfortable. And I told everyone, you want to distance yourself from this idea because it doesn't work out very well. Destiny. Team of destiny. Because the minute you throw that out there, I can tell you from very personal experience, the results are usually not to your liking. Because once you buy into something like that, you stop buying into maybe the little things that work out well there. And I'm not saying that the Vikings team did that. The Vikings got beaten very easy ways to see and manifest. They lost the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball last night in a way that was shocking for me in both regards. Now, on the offensive side, you lose Pat Elflein in the second half, your rookie center, one of the, a guy who had done really well for them. You already had Mike Remmers over at left guard in that game, and right tackle was having a rough night, and you can't make those switches at that point, so you lost a lot of your depth and versatility on that line throughout the game. But really defensively, that Vikings defense was on their heels for most of the game yesterday, and you can credit some of the run-pass options for creating a little bit of confusion. But the bottom line is that on both sides of the ball, the Eagles really took the fight to Minnesota, and as a result, we got to see a bunch of people climb Crisco telephone poles. And now, as a result, we get to spin that forward. It's amazing. Again, guys are getting bold out here. Malcolm Jenkins, the Eagles safety, after the game yesterday, already letting people know how he feels about the Super Bowl matchup.
We don't care who you put out in front of us, man. This team is destined. We're going out there to Minnesota to win the Super Bowl. We ain't just going for a field trip. We're going to win.
Hadn't heard that sound yet. He said it. Said the word. I got nothing but love for Philly. Across the hall this morning on Golic and Wingo, it's the first time in a while I've seen my dad actually excited about one of the teams he played for. Obviously grew up with a lot of Cleveland roots and roots for those teams, but played 6-7 years with the Philadelphia Eagles, played at Notre Dame. Has a rooting interest, but is detached in a way that I am jealous of because I am very emotionally invested in Notre Dame. But for a guy who spent a lot of his career in Philadelphia, rarely has he allowed his fandom to creep in. And for the first time going into this week, I was actually sort of excited because I saw the fandom from him and my mom, two people that had spent a lot of their formative years as young adults in that city, really feeling good for them again because of the success that they were going to have. And now I just heard Malcolm Jenkins say destiny, and I really feel sad for everyone because I know how that works out. Like, they opened up already. The Eagles are going to get to continue their underdog theme because they've opened up as the biggest underdogs in the Super Bowl since 2009. I think they're early 6-point dogs, 6.5-point dogs, something like that, as Vegas puts out the early odds for this game. And now you understand why. I wouldn't be surprised if that line moves up after that destiny comment because it never works out well. Don't do it. That being said, this morning, hurry to the internet and scour as best you can to find all the Crisco videos possible. I'm pretty sure someone rode an ATV up the Rocky Steps. It is basically a scene from The Purge in downtown Philly right now, and I'm here for it. Live your best life. Be safe, everyone. Try not to bleed on too much stuff.
First and last, the podcast.
The Philadelphia Eagles are not a hate-worthy team. You could argue with Carson Wentz that this has actually become sort of a likable team during the season, or at the very least a team that you're sort of about. Like, they don't really have a villain on this team, and they don't have enough success like the Patriots to really be villainous. The Patriots team, people hate them. People hate that organization. They think they're a bunch of cheaters. With the Eagles, people just hate their fans. They've got enough built-in history to where maybe we can assign some of this stuff with regularity, but most fan bases that experience success tend to behave pretty poorly if given the opportunity. So we knew at least the Eagles fans were going to behave interestingly last night. So if the Vikings had won, we'd had Minnesota hosting a home Super Bowl, all those things. If the Eagles won, we knew we were going to get people trying to climb greasy poles. And for that, we say thank you. I just saw a video of a guy driving a dune buggy up the Rocky Steps. Look what God did this Monday morning. I tell you, it is an exciting time to be alive. Unless you're in Cleveland. First and last, Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. So last week we heard the first rumblings. I had said I was surprised in the midst of the Cavs' January skid, which is sort of, it feels planned. It's like it's marked in LeBron's calendar. The schedule comes out. It's like, all right, who do we open up with? Oh, we got Boston, Kyrie Irving. Who do we see on Christmas Day? Oh, the Cavs or the Warriors rematch the finals, all that great stuff. Up January, all right, let's mark off, lose a few games here and figure out what I am going to call for this year. And I said LeBron James had been overwhelmingly positive until he wasn't. And then the conversation starts to come up where people are asking questions about Ty Lue's future. And LeBron gives these sort of non-committal answer and says he doesn't know much about that. No one's brought it up with him, which means he absolutely knows a lot about this because nothing goes on. I'm not saying he's GM LeBron the way a lot of people want to make it out, but that guy is consultant in that building, as he should be, because he's the foundation of that building. He is the ceiling. He is the walls. He is everything. So of course you should consult him. But now it's getting to a point where we are parsing through these coaching decisions a little more. The headline now is that the Cavaliers and Tyronn Lue aren't going to make lineup changes even after that blowout 148-point outing against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's all starting to come to a head now where we've got to think about this as a possibility, mostly because history dictates as such. Like, you can forget LeBron James, the coach killer narrative, going back any further than just the last couple of seasons when David Blatt, who was in first place, coming off a season where he had flat out stolen games with LeBron James from the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals without Kevin Love and without Kyrie Irving, and still got shown the door. So yes, we rightly ask questions, and we rightly have to answer questions about those other questions. Dave McMenamin, our ESPN NBA Cavs reporter, on the 11 o'clock Sports Center with Hannah Storm, talking about LeBron's breakdown of Ty Lue.
I think if you really want to look for a tepid endorsement, go back a couple years ago when LeBron James was asked about David Blatt's job status. And then he said, what other coach do we got? And I don't write the checks around here. That was a clear message being sent to the media in regards to his thoughts about David Blatt. I think this is quite the opposite. The way LeBron spoke about Tyronn Lue, he said he would hope not to have his job in jeopardy. Also, several other players in the Cavs locker room spoke up in support of Ty Lue. Kevin Love the other day said, I love him. Dwayne Wade dismissed any thought of Ty Lue's job being in jeopardy. And J.R. Smith told me last night that, hey, the coaching staff doesn't go out and play for us. We need to play better, execute their schemes better. If we do that and we're still struggling, then sure, you can put it on them. But right now, it is our fault, not theirs.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr. here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Kevin Love, very emotional. I love you. You don't understand. I love you. Look at me when I say it. You understand Kevin Love just looking for love anywhere that he can find it. Because, man, I'm actually pleasantly surprised this year that we're not blaming Kevin Love for this stuff. The guy who's had a tough time since Isaiah Thomas has come back, finding his offensive role, so much so that he went out and basically put himself through a shooting workout after a game the other night. So it would be an easy place to go. I'm glad we've at least ditched that crutch. That was very 2 years ago. Fit out, don't fit in. Or fit in, don't fit out. Strike that. Reverse it. But so now the Cavaliers, it becomes a question of what do you do going forward? Like, Ty Lue was the guy that they all liked because he had been the assistant before. And I said there's always that difference in the relationship when it's the guy that doesn't have to be the bad cop, when it's a guy that was a former player, when it's a guy that you build a much more personal relationship with. And now, albeit basketball's different because there are fewer guys on the team for the head coach to have to interact with than a football locker room where you are closer with your position coach. You do interact more with him and the coordinator on your side of the ball. This one becomes a lot different because of that situation. But still, with Ty Lue, you understood that there was always that relationship there that if you were David Blatt, you probably felt uneasy about because you knew those guys liked and respected him apparently a lot more than they liked and respected you. Now, part of that was a personality difference that we remember with David Blatt going back. That doesn't appear to be the case with Ty Lue, who's not afraid to challenge his best player, who has done it in big moments that have netted positive results, so you build up that cachet. But to J.R. Smith's point, it is about the guys that go out and play, and more so for the Cavs, the guys who haven't. And so as this continues to go south, I still sort of wait for how this team looks in a few weeks as IT continues to get healthy. As the lineup and rotation does stay stagnant, I think that's an important point actually in Ty Lue's favor. To say, why am I going to change up what we believe gives us the best chance and what we just haven't seen with enough regularity at this point with the groups out there? Tristan Thompson's been injured. We know guys have been nicked up all along the way at different points. Again, through the first half of the season, 7th in the league as far as games missed by injury from players. And so when you stack those up in a way that is not, all at once, obviously the results are going to be a tough time in continuity in places like defense and rotation where it's manifested so far for the Cavs. So I'll continue to hold off on the panic switch. I'll even continue to hold off on it for Ty Lue. It's just the kind of guy I am.
First and last, the podcast. First and last, the podcast.
We are ready to go. Super Bowl 52 is now locked in. We get the Patriots-Eagles rematch. Last time, if you may remember, there was a lot of Donovan McNabb vomiting, Terrell Owens balling out on a broken leg, and it all still not being good enough. This time around, Eagles fans hoping for a little bit different outcome, but this time it will not be on the back of some franchise-altering quarterback that they drafted. No. This one's all coming down to Nick Foles, who went out yesterday and decided that despite what we had seen from him in his limited sample size, since they lost MVP candidate Carson Wentz to injury down the stretch of the season, he was going to put the team on his back, though, for Madden, and complete his final 15 passes, joining Joe Montana in the 89 playoffs as the only quarterback to complete 75% of their passes in back-to-back postseason game, helping the Eagles rattle off the final 38 points of the NFC Championship game. So you combine that with the eternal greatness of Tom Brady and this Patriot outfit, who, again, I can't express enough, as we all felt the dam breaking yesterday for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was the 11th time that Tom Brady had led the Patriots on a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter or overtime of a playoff game. 5 more than any other quarterback in the Super Bowl area. But more so than that, there have only been 11 postseason games in NFL history where the winning team was down double digits with 10 minutes or less to go. 4 of those were the Patriots during the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady era, and the last 3 included a Danny Amendola touchdown catch from Tom Brady during the rally. It is just such a tried and true formula that I'm not, no one was surprised, right? Like, that was the expected outcome yesterday. A lot of people would say it was the fixed outcome based on that penalty disparity. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. And so, to help us get back and relive some of the more important moments of the game, we play a little something called low-key, high-key around here, where we try and notice some of the best and some of maybe the more unnoticed portions of what went on yesterday in the games. Now, everyone is going to remember that low-key in the Patriots and Jaguars game, that 3rd and 18 play was a game-changing moment for the Patriots. Sounded like this.
3rd down and 18 for the Patriots. Dorsett to the right, along with Allen. 2 receivers left. Shotgun snap to Brady. A twist up from Brady. Shuffles left. Throws down the middle, and a catch is made at the 46-yard line by Amendola. Danny fights for the football and takes it away from the safety, Deshaun Gibson. What a throw by Brady.
That call courtesy of 98.5, the Sports Hub. No disputing that plays important to that game. It's one of those, because of the chunk play, a chance on 3rd down for that defense, that great defense, to cement itself and get off the field. That's a back-breaking play for any defense. But Heike, that 3rd and 6 delay a game that Jacksonville took to set up the Patriots' 2-minute drive at the end of the first half, to me was probably the seminal moment of the game. You give a quarterback who operates better than maybe anyone we've seen in the NFL's history in 2-minute drills and presser situations in that no-huddle offense, and give them a chance to go down and score, which they did with time left on the clock. That, to me, was where the floodgates came off. You were Jacksonville with a chance to try and put this one away at the end of the first half, and you missed it completely. And you could even say in that moment, so last night when you look at both games, Loki, we learned a lot about Nick Foles last night. We already talked glowingly about him. His head coach, Doug Peterson, showering him with praise.
My hat's off to Nick. Trusting in his ability, trusting in me as the head coach, and putting him in, ideal situations and play, situations to be successful on the field. And then for the guys to believe in him. He's not a rookie. He's a veteran player who's played a lot of games in this league. He started a lot of games. He had a Pro Bowl year just a couple years ago. So this is not a rookie we're talking about. And just so happy for him, and what he's been through and everything now to finally put not only himself but help this football team get to where we want to go and hopefully finish the year right.
First and last, Mike Golic Jr., all fine and true. We learned a lot about Nick Foles, the way they let him operate at the end of the first half, where with right around a minute left on the clock, the Eagles pushed the pace, they drove the ball down the field, and they end up getting a field goal before the half. Put more points on the board, continue to establish what for them was all night pedal to the metal. I mean, for Nick Foles, averaged 10.7 yards per completion last night, pushing the ball down the field all night. But high key, we learned way more about what Jacksonville thought about Blake Bortles at the end of the first half for them the other night. Because they let the Patriots go on that drive, that 2-minute drive, and score. And there's about 50 seconds left, a minute left, where they had enough time to do something. They knelt on that and they got to halftime to hold on to their you-know-whats. And that's why I don't know if there's any world where Blake Bortles is the starting quarterback for Jacksonville next year after what we saw yesterday. So you look at that team and you say now, on the other side of things, because the conspiracy that will come out of this is very penalty related. A.J. Bouye already crying foul. A lot of people will point to, I think, the most misguided tweet on the part of the NFL that I have seen in quite some time from NFL research, saying that the Patriots were called for one penalty against the Jaguars in this game. It was the fewest penalties called on one team in a playoff game since the 2011 AFC Championship, where the Patriots were called for one penalty on a win over the Ravens. And now listen, that would probably be my beef too if I was a Jags fan, although it's worth pointing out that the physical style play of both of those defenses may lend itself more to some of those things being called, but the disparity in the first half, I get it. What I would be more concerned about if I was Jacksonville high key is the fact that Jacksonville 4-man pass rush went nowhere and did nothing after the initial wave of that game. Give all credit to the Patriots, Josh McDaniels in that offense, a lot of chip help, never really exposing their tackles. But it took Jacksonville till way late in the game to decide to adjust in their own right and send extra guys. And you saw Myles Jack get home, and you saw pressure start to come when they did that. But we said all week that Jacksonville defensive front, we started making those Coughlin comparisons to the Giants, those NASCAR packages. And that pressure was nowhere to be found over most of that night, where it wasn't backed up by guys on the back end holding it down. And now we go back over to the NFC Championship game, because this last one, a lot of people are going to point to Case Keenum in that game, a guy who I had to hear all year, people just waiting for the other shoe to drop, trying to figure out. And it wasn't a great night for him. Throws that first pick six. Again, Chris Long, your MVP, getting in there. But all night, Case Keenum looked rattled. Looked like he was off his game. I don't think he was getting protected very well. Finished 28 of 48, 271, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Average 5.5 yards per reception, damn near. Not a night that he's going to want to remember. But high key, that Minnesota decision, to not kick the field goal, take it to 3 touchdowns and just get points on the board in the third quarter, seems like something that I would call into question a little bit more. Because we've seen in the past, we saw as recently as that Pats Super Bowl, that getting points on the board in that situation can sometimes be the difference. And instead they chose to just leave it. And now finally, because we couldn't leave Philly fans out of this, low-key, Crisco's not that hard to climb. Like, I saw plenty of videos of people last night that still made it up those poles. Because they've got want to. It's like a high schooler. You tell them not to do something, of course they're going to go out and do it. And they're going to do it better than you thought they could do it, because now they're motivated. You didn't know. I didn't know Philly fans. I didn't even know if Philly fans knew they wanted to climb up those poles as much as they did until you told them, oh no, we've greased it. Game on. Like, you guys see that go down to the Naval Academy every year. They grease up that obelisk and they still find their way to the top. So you knew they were going to find a way. Teamwork makes the dream work. But high key, there will be very few things as impressive to me as some rogue Philadelphia fan finding a way to just get a dune buggy, first off, down to the steps there, period, through what I have to imagine was a pretty chaotic purge-like scene after that game last night spilling into the streets. But to get it all the way to the top of the Philly steps, and at least for that brief time avoid arrest that I'm sure was imminent to follow as soon as the camera switched off. Well, to me, that is your kiss the cook masterpiece moment, Philadelphia. You can lean into that one, be proud of that one, as I'm sure we will see that played early and often throughout the course of the day.
Thank you for listening to the First and Last podcast. You can listen and subscribe to all ESPN podcasts in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. First and Last.